Thursday. Sorry, get 10 million things on my mind. Good evening. Today is December 6th. Tonight's school committee meeting is being broadcasted by local media. If you wish for a copy of this broadcast, please reach out to the administration or the school committee, and we'll be happy to give you a copy. Before we begin tonight, we do have special guests today. We have Sarah Rhodes with the Chamber Choir tonight singing us a song. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves before we get started, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Neha, and I'm in 11th grade.
I'm Brianna, I'm a senior.
I'm Maddie, I'm also a senior.
I'm Jacob, I'm also a senior.
I'm Charlie, I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Dylan, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Sarah Rhodey, I'm the teacher.
I'm Emily, I'm a junior.
I'm Erin, and I'm a junior.
And what are you guys singing for us tonight?
Linus and Lucy.
All right. Stage is yours.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for these guys?
Excellent.
Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Awesome. All right, before we move on and tackle the agenda that we have in front of us, I hope you guys don't mind. I've got a statement that I'd like to read for the committee, for everyone else that's out there. So here we go. There has been some information that has circulated in the community recently that does not represent or present a complete or accurate picture of our schools. One recent example A recent email implied that there were over 330 police incidents at Brookside over the past 2 years, a school comprised of 5 and 6-year-olds. The actual number of these incidents were 5, a clear misrepresentation of the data, which included routine property checks, medical calls, or incidents during non-school hours like nights and weekends. As chair of this committee, I believe it is imperative that I spend a few minutes tonight reiterating the strengths and areas of continued growth for the Milford Public Schools. In my experience working directly with school faculty and administration, I have seen evidence time and time again that our schools provide all our students with an incredible amount of opportunities, programs, and experiences. Each member of the Milford School Committee has children in one or more of our schools and feel that their children are receiving excellent education in an extremely safe and supportive environment. As a committee, we are in full agreement that the school system best operates and the interests of our students are best served when there is a positive climate and culture, including free exchange of ideas, views, concerns between and among all stakeholders, including teachers, administrators, students, and the broader Milford community. We have an outstanding and dedicated faculty who work tirelessly to meet all the needs of our students. Our teachers and staff, including administrators, regularly go above and beyond to help all students succeed and often work as coaches, directors, or advisors for after-school activities and sports. In a review of the 2018 MCAS scores, Woodland, Stacy, and the high school is designated by the state as not requiring assistance or intervention. While all schools in Massachusetts have areas for growth, this designation means that we are doing our job based on the standards set by the State Department of Education. Brookside, Memorial, and Shining Star received no designation from the state because state testing does not begin until the 3rd grade. Milford High School has increased its performance percentile rank by more than 70% in the last 2 years. Woodland Elementary was designated as meeting targets this past year. Woodland has increased its performance percentile rank by more than 40% in the last 2 years. Over the last 3 school years, we have become a one-to-one technology device environment in grades 3 through 12. We've added STEAM-focused Project Lead the Way courses at Woodland, Stacy, and the high school. Developed partnerships with Framingham State University, Mass Bay Community College, LaSalle College to support college access and completion, and increased the capacity of our English learning department to meet the growing needs in our community. Milford High School graduates have attended and been accepted to the top colleges and universities in the country. Over the past 5 years, we have sent a higher percentage of students to college than districts in the rest of the state. We offer 19 advanced placement courses, early college courses, a hospitality, tourism, and management program, a business and baking program to support student preparation in college and careers. We are seeing an increased need for career-focused education, which is why this past year we have implemented a construction and building trades course to support students who are planning to enter the workforce directly after graduation. We are also looking at a number of intern and partnership opportunities with local businesses like Waters, Dell, Milton Cat, Consigli Construction, and community colleges to support our students' success in careers such as advanced manufacturing, medical fields, automotive technology, and other growing fields where the employment outlook is promising over the next decade. In developing these non-traditional pathways, our school administration has had the foresight to create rich educational opportunities that meet the diverse needs of our student population. It is important for community members to know that we have a rigorous plan for growth in the Milford Public Schools. To this point, we are in the 2nd year of a living 3-year strategic plan that I encourage you to examine on the Milford Public School website. The strategic plan establishes a vision for the Milford schools and identifies the areas of focus. As a school district, we do face some challenges and there are areas of improvement. We are confident in our teachers and administrators and will continue to partner with them and the broader community in a productive way and use research and data to focus on opportunities to improve, not on reasons to blame. The Milford Public Schools strives to provide well-rounded experiences for all students. At the secondary level, there is access to more than 100 clubs, teams, performance groups, and activities, cultural exchange programs with 5 countries, and a wealth of elective courses that range from video production to STEAM. Over the last 3 years, 75 high school graduates are college athletes at the Division I, II, or III levels. This is approximately 3 times the national average. We have a growing high-needs population this year with more than 50% of our students in this category. It's a lot. That's more than 2,025 students in the Milford Public Schools. A student designated as high needs falls into one or more of the following groups: students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, or English learner. We've added a number of supports to address the needs of this growing population, including a social worker at the elementary level, a social emotional director, and a classroom and administrative support for all of our English learning programs. We continue to work tirelessly to support the needs of all of our students to close the learning gaps across the district. Teaching has changed over the years, and we as a district need to learn to change with the times. I personally look to career educators like Dr. McIntyre, Dr. Joseph, Craig Consigli, Lucy Jenkins, Jen Norjanian, Lisa Kincaid, our building administrators, and our faculty members who have dedicated their lives to education and who would know the best path forward for the Milford Public Schools. I also look to my fellow committee members as well as past members who have different but informative and creative ways on how we can handle and achieve our goals here at the Milford Public Schools. We all have different viewpoints in our schools, but at the end of the day, we are all in it for one reason: to give all of our kids in Milford a chance to learn, not only by MCAS scores, but by also experiencing life within the Milford Public Schools. I am proud to serve as chair of this Milford School Committee. As a member of this committee, I graduated of Milford. I am a proud parent of 2 children in the schools, and I question the motivation behind some of these negative campaigns that we are receiving. I question the ethics of this negative campaign, and I would encourage members of our community to do the same. This negative campaign has been intentionally misleading and deceptive and should no longer be tolerated. We live in a great community with excellent schools, and we, the administration, staff, school committee, are committed to supporting a culture of continuous improvement for all of our kids. Should anyone in the community have any questions or concerns about our schools, please feel free to reach out to any member of the school committee or the administration. Just wanted to say that it's been, we've all been receiving emails. I know town meeting members have received emails and everyone's asking a lot of questions, so I figured it'd be good to get as much information out as I can here. And if anybody has any questions, ask us. We're the people that will figure it out and help you understand what your questions and concerns are. These people are volunteers for what we're doing, and we can get the answers. Career educators sit here on this panel as well. We know the answers. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else. Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving along. Oh,
No,
I'm
that's
sorry,
I was
Jeff.
just going to say thank you for putting that together and for voicing that message. And I apologize if you covered it, because you covered a lot there, but the school choice numbers and the trend in the positive direction over the last 2 years, I think, goes without saying, is a testament to the direction that we're going in.
Right.
And I think Kevin can will speak to those in more
Yes.
detail, but we are in double-digit growth in the positive direction as as folks change the perception of the district and migrate back in this direction. So anyway, thank you for putting that message together.
Joe, I'm sorry, I also
No,
have
no,
a
go
statement
ahead.
if I can read something as well.
Yep.
Along with hundreds of others, I have been the recipient of a series of emails from one individual providing select results from state accountability reports and, among other things, stating a concern for the lack of education plan for this district. Perhaps the most important goal of this school committee is to establish educational goals and policies for the district. For Milford, these high-level goals have been outlined in the 4 strategic focus areas and more explicitly defined in the district's measures of strategic plan of effectiveness. Measures to accomplish these goals are prescribed in even more detail in the respective administrator, teacher, and staff goals, as well as in the individual school improvement plans. Work must continue to improve our schools and drive results. Complacency is not an option. As stated in the plans and the goals noted above, we must work and demonstrate success in closing achievement gaps for all students, addressing absenteeism, and improving not only test scores, but more importantly, post-secondary outcomes for all students. This administration and this committee should be held accountable for these goals and the measures to drive results. In accordance with the authority granted to the committee, this is accomplished through our role in establishing educational goals and policies for the district and reviewing and approving the school's budget. These roles are taken very seriously. Ongoing attempts to systematically portray a negative image of our schools and using select pieces of information cannot be tolerated and, quite frankly, is not productive. I take personal offense to the notion that, I quote, the school committee and district leadership either lack the confidence, motivation, or desire to be held accountable. We must all be accountable for our actions and our words, and I hope future efforts and energy will be spent moving this district forward in a more positive and productive way. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Meg.
All right. All right, so let's get started. I do need to approve minutes of our last meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Jim, seconded by Joe. All in favor? Next on the agenda is announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Anyone?
I've got two address those. The first one is, we have a water main break on Spruce Street near Stacy Middle School in the Milford Public Library. And Spruce Street will be closed tomorrow again, so we'll be following the same arrival and dismissal patterns. Parents should,
Just trying to steal
I
your
know it's
thunder.
very exciting, this
Just
announcement.
trying to steal your thunder, that's all.
The parents who are dropping off or picking up their children should line up on Congress Street, both in the morning and the afternoon, and follow the pattern we established today. Walkers will enter through the School Street entrance, and as well as be dismissed through the School Street entrance. This could have an impact on the elementary bus routes because the elementary bus routes follow the middle school bus routes. So please, I'm asking for everybody's patience for at least one more day until this issue is resolved. Secondly, I want to thank, I'm going to shift gears and thank our teachers, administrators, and coaches and advisors who all participated in the arts and athletics showcase this past Monday. We had more than, I think, 100 of our faculty members and students all promoting all of the fantastic opportunities that are available at Milford High School. And a number of our committee members went as well. I don't know if anybody wanted to comment, but I thought it was a great night.
No, it was a good turnout.
All right, that's all
There
right.
you go.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
I just wanted to know, can I please be noted as abstaining from the November 1st minutes?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
I apologize.
No, that's
I even
okay.
wrote it down November 1st. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Invitation to speak. All right. Next on the agenda, Vendetti contract. Mr. Lenny Marcone.
Thank you.
How are you, sir?
Very good. Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Ryan.
So we're in our third year of our contract with Vendetti Motors, and we have an option to extend it for 2 more years. We did some research on area contracts, and we feel that the extension is in the guidelines or the parameters of the area. We've experienced good service from Vendetti over the years, and what's happening not only in this state, throughout the country with the lack of drivers, now would be a good time just to extend, I think, our contract and move on. And then in 2 years, we can look, at putting it back out to bid. So my recommendation to the board would be to extend the Vendetti contract for 2 more years.
Anybody have any questions for Lenny? Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Len, for putting
Yes.
all the numbers together. Obviously, it was, goes without saying, when you look at current, there is an increase as we extend it, but in comparison to other school districts, we're still at the same rate or just below the rates of, I think, of other school districts, correct?
Correct, yes, yep.
Are we having problems in Milford Line getting drivers, or how's
Not
that
right
going
now,
for
we're
us?
not, thank God.
Okay, so things are
We're
moving
moving smoothly, and they work with us. If we do have some issues, they will work with us, and they have.
Well, today's a great example. I
Yeah,
mean,
today would be a great example, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can just chime in and say, having seen districts where we've changed companies and had significant losses of drivers and significant disruptions to what's been working, I would advocate that if it's working well here and we're happy with the support that we're getting, that
Yes.
I would see no reason to change right now, and I appreciate you doing the work and look at the comparables.
I'm just curious, then, when you go out to bid, typically how many people would respond, and where are those vendors actually located in terms of?
Well, the last bid, we didn't have any.
Okay,
We had one, just,
okay.
and that's typical throughout the state, right now. And like what Mrs. Parson said, new companies that come in have experienced difficulty, and we've seen that in two surrounding, towns.
Doesn't seem there's any cons to this this seems like
Yeah,
it's
this
in our
would,
best interest.
right now, this would be in the best interest, I believe, yes.
How long have we been with the same bus service? How many years?
20-plus years,
Wow.
yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Lenny, or Kathy, how many buses do we own now that we utilize?
We own 3 yellow buses. We have one 71 passenger, we have a 47 passenger, which has the capacity to go to 5 wheelchairs if we need it. And then we have a 12 passenger, which has the capacity of having 2 wheelchairs if we want it. And then we also have 3 vans.
And do we use our own buses for some with the after-school activities, athletics?
Yes, we use 2 of our buses we use to transport students to and from school. And then we will use them on the weekends or later, after the school run, to do like a small group, such as cheerleaders or a golf team or something like that. And then we have our big 71 passenger, which, for instance, like this whole week, it's Heritage Week at Stacy, so we brought those students down to the YMCA. So that, it was really no cost to the district. I believe it's Tuesday, we're bringing a group into, is it Wellesley College or?
Mass Bay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I couldn't remember which one, because Josh gave me a bunch of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're doing it throughout the year.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we're going there. And so we do a lot of things like that. So that bus will actually work during the day with education, moving the children to different colleges, et cetera, like we went to Johnson and Wales. And then in the evening, bring, basketball teams, baseball, whatever sports. So it works, quite a bit.
Yeah, if I recall, when we purchased that bus a couple years ago, it really resulted in some cost savings for the district. So I don't know if that's, at some point, I guess you reach a point of diminishing returns, but is it worth exploring getting additional buses?
I think we've talked about it.
Yes.
The last bus that we purchased, the routes that we were able to obtain, it has paid for itself. So it's now, the only cost to us right now running is our hourly rate for the bus driver, in the gas.
Yes, the fuel, yeah.
We just did some serious work on our oldest bus, which is 2011, but that only has 100,000 miles on it. With a diesel, we could go another 100,000 with that one vehicle, so the potential is there. We've talked about it. It's really gonna revolve around the labor base. One wheelchair route, it could be a $400 charge a day. So by having that bus, it gives us a lot of, wiggle room with what we can do with our routes.
That's great.
All right, so this does require a vote. Can I get a motion to accept the new contract? Motion by Jim, seconded by Megan. All in favor?
Okay.
Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Len.
You too, thank you.
Next on the agenda,
See you tomorrow, Len.
plan for structured learning day, blizzard bags. Dr. Joseph, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thank you, sir.
Ironically, the last time we were going to talk about this, we did snow out of the meeting, so I just wanted to make sure if you didn't have the packet from the last time, that you had the updated copy. So thanks for having me. It's great to follow what Joe said, to really talk about moving forward in a way that's creating opportunities to maximize our learning. And we started talking about alternative learning days when other districts, or blizzard bag days, or essentially a school day when there's no school due to snow, is to really maximize our time on learning. And one of the things that we studied during this period of time is the learning that can happen in January, February versus the last day of school. And in that, we thought we could have more learning happen in January and February with the devices that we had, with the motivation we've been doing with a lot of work online, and with our teachers looking at this and other districts doing it as well. So I came to you in September and shared with you our initial draft and talked about that the DESE is on board with districts doing this, but it takes a local vote to approve this with the district. So we took your feedback. Craig and I have had many meetings with the CTL team leaders. I've actually gone to multiple different districts to talk to district leaders of districts that piloted last year. And with all that feedback, we took that and updated our plan. One of the things to note is that we're going to be asking in this plan for one day to start after January when we come back to school, because especially with this being pushed back and allowing more time for meeting with teachers, we first came to say the first snow day to make sure it happened. But at the same time, we wanted to be fair and equitable to make this work really well. And if it happened to be a snow day before it was fully rolled out, that's not going to give us a true sense if this is going to work or not. But if we get an approval today, then we'll have a few weeks to get the materials ready in case of a very early snow day in January. We talked about doing physical work for first graders through fifth graders, where teachers would prepare almost like an emergency sick day lesson plans that the students would take home. This extra time also is going to allow those first through fifth grade teachers to talk with students. If we have a snow day, these are some assignments that are going to be done. If we have a snow day, the folder that you took home 2 weeks ago, you're going to take it out and do that work, because it's going to be a full day of school for students and count as a full day of school. For our 6th through 12th graders, we're going to have some e-learning for them. Teachers have really been starting to get accustomed to utilizing online capabilities, either through Google Classroom. We just rolled out Schoology at the high school, and just either their own websites or communication with students to plan something. Because the 1 through 5 is going to have to be really pre-planned and sent home possibly a week or so before, the 6 through 12 may be something that is planned that could go along with what's next in their lesson or the next day theme or unit. One thing to note, because we don't know if the snow day the power is going to go out. We don't know, certain situations of that snow day. The lessons and activities are not going to be due the next day. For one, to ensure that students both who need extra help can get that if they come to school, or if there's power out and it was an online activity and they didn't have that. Because the goal of the day is to maximize learning. The goal of the day is to have these 5 or so lessons for students to complete. It's not to make sure it's done the next day. One of the things that we also looked at is our integrated arts. And our integrated arts teachers are also going to be planning lessons to send home in either the folder for the 1 through 5 or an electronic lesson, that if it's a Tuesday and it's a music day, that they may be doing some research on a composer, or if it's physical education, they could do some research on the Olympics, or set example for those grades, so that the students would be receiving all of their classwork and then an integrated arts lesson for that day, because it will be counted through the state as a school day, and it'll also be counted for the teachers as a work day. So the pre-planning is not working outside of contracted time, it's just being part of planning the activities for a day they're not in school. We also, when we met with the CTLs, asked for availability for teachers during the day. Again, we've never done this, that's why we're piloting it. So if there's an exorbitant amount of snow and people can't be on as much as possible, we understand that. We're asking for a good faith effort in this first day to be available if there's questions, or to maybe check in with students at the beginning of the lessons, or sending a message out to families. So moving forward, what we would do, if I'm coming to you today for an approval, if it is approved, I'll be submitting this to the state, and they'd be filing this, and when we do have that day, it would be approved for a school day for us. So if it happened to be the first snow day, and we didn't have any in December, that essentially is just the next day of school, and we'd go on from there. We'd also communicate that to the principals, and in talking with them yesterday, they would be communicating it to their staff and prep them in whatever grade levels, you know, that they would be working 1st through 5th. They'd have to have a lot more face-to-face contact, talking with students. 6th through 12, I also assume they would need to have some conversations with students, because this will be new to them, to have conversations. We had bounced around some ideas of making some promo videos or different things to inform the community, because this would be new as well for them as we venture forward with our new e-learning or alternative learning days for our 1 through 5.
Thank you, sir. I'll open up to any questions. Go ahead, Joe.
And I think you said this, so this would be a district-wide decision, right? It wouldn't be a school-based decision?
Correct. Basically, Joe, the local school committees, per the State Department of Education, would vote these policies in. It's a local decision, but it's a district-wide decision.
And the teachers are on board with this too, right? The union and everyone?
So they put a side letter together, that they
Which
agreed to
we
up to
just
2, so it's
also-
moving around today, which they've already agreed to, up to 2 days, and I think we're saying, I think 1 day kind of makes sense for us this year is what we're recommending.
Yeah, we're only looking at a pilot program then this year.
Yeah, our
Just-
goal is to
just
have
like
this
1 day.
1 day this year, and I'd like to come back after that day and report out how it went, some of the assignments that were done, and some feedback maybe from teachers and families. You'll all have students at home, because I just heard from Joe that everybody has students in the district, that you'll be a great resource to tell us how it went.
Oh, boy. Can I say, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I guess my question is students in 6 through 12, do they normally take their Chromebooks home? Like, I know, for example, like my husband, if he knows there's snow coming, he'll take his laptop home with him, the night before. Do they need to, like, plan ahead like that, or do they normally
So
take
we
them
have
home?
under 10% who do not, and one of the things that
Okay.
came from our principal discussion yesterday is maybe working something out that they could, or if it's something that they're not necessarily required to use it, then they wouldn't have to.
Well, the other piece too is we're gonna allow, like, the assignments won't be due the
Multiple
day they
days.
return.
Okay.
Also, so there'll be a gap in time, so like if students, like, let's say we have a storm and there's no internet, like, or power gets knocked out,
Yeah.
obviously the students aren't gonna be able to access their Chromebooks or have light in the home.
Right.
There's a number of students that might need some additional support. So we're gonna give a certain amount of time, so there'll be an opportunity to kind of get the work done. If either one, a student doesn't bring the Chromebook home,
Mhm.
2, they don't have access to Wi-Fi at home,
Mhm.
or 3, there's some kind of power outage or
Massive.
issue, or 4, the student needs additional support
Mhm.
to complete an assignment.
Okay.
Thank you for putting all this together, and Craig too, to you. I wasn't clear on what you said about the elementary students. So would they be bringing these assignments home ahead of time, or?
Yes, so they'd be prepared and sent home with students before, possibly a week before a possible snow day.
Okay.
Or if they planned it in January, we're probably gonna have a day, if teachers put something together, it's send it home. It's gonna be a pre-planned, sent home in a folder, essentially where the original Blizzard bag name came from. The students brought these assignments home in a bag
Okay.
for their day of work. So there'd be hard copies of work that went home. There may be some videos that the lessons are watch on YouTube, a video about something and comment on it, but it will definitely be planned before and sent home before the actual day.
Okay, so the expectation is the bag would stay at home. So if we anticipate there might be a snow day and the bag is sitting at home, but let's say we don't have a snow day until February, do the kids bring the bag back, or do they keep it at home, or have we thought about that yet?
We have thought about that, so
Okay.
there's probably going to be a time lapse. So if it isn't a snow day till September and the teacher plans something mid-December for possibly early January, it wouldn't be as difficult to come back and maybe swap some things out. We haven't got into the real weeds of the actual lesson planning before the full plan is approved and moved forward. But
Okay.
if it is months out and the lessons are not applicable, they could probably switch some things out. But because for most of the 1 through 4, this teacher in class, or 1 through 3, definitely the teachers in classroom stayed the same. They have a lot of more opportunities where 4th and 5th do a little bit more switching.
Right. I think the thing I was thinking of more than the lesson expiring, so to speak, is that the material's getting lost. Because I think the minute we send something home, we have the chance of
And that's
it.
part of the reason why we're gonna have a grace period even at the elementary
Vanishing.
level, because,
So-
a lot of that does happen.
So we would just want to make sure that teachers are flexible, so if something gets lost, we'd have plenty of extras, especially at
Sure.
the lower level, to
Yeah.
replicate that.
I think we see that when they're due the next day, when they come home, things get lost. So
Maybe?
we're definitely going to take that into consideration.
Okay.
And I think another reason to pilot that, to see if that's an issue, or how can we move towards some more online activity so that doesn't happen. And for us as a committee and team to gather that information to either increase or continue with what we're doing right now.
Okay, and then my second question is, for any student, especially at the secondary level, who may not have internet access, are we leaving it, so here it says middle and high school students should speak with their teacher, so I'm just wondering if there's a way to streamline that, because they have multiple teachers, and in some cases it might be hard for a student to approach multiple teachers, or they may feel uncomfortable about it. Can we involve guidance or something to
Sure,
get
definitely
those kids
involve
set
guidance,
up?
and Dr. McIntyre was saying it's not going to be due the next day, so they'd have access either during the day or
Okay.
another avenue for them to find
Okay.
time to do that work.
Okay, great, thank you.
And just one more thing, because of that, because we have a one-to-one environment from 6 to 12, a lot of those discussions have already happened. Especially last year at Stacy when we rolled it out, we wanted to ensure we had an idea of who had access and who didn't, and similar process at the high school this year.
Okay, so that's already probably on the radar.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dr. Joseph, I'm just, for higher level grades where they have a certain number of periods a day, is the expectation they're going to have an assignment from every period that they would have to cover off?
Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of the rollout, maybe talk a little bit more about the ownership between yourself and building leadership in terms of how the message is getting to teachers and, kind of how we've reached them all and explained to them. I'm just anticipating maybe some inconsistencies in terms of this class gave assignment that took 20 minutes and this one took 3 hours, and just kind of how it's
Well, I think that's going to be tough to really address here on the planning stage, because that is going to be kind of a decision through the buildings. We would like it to model what it would be in a class. It's obviously not going to be 6 hours of work. But one of the things that we talked about yesterday, we had our leadership meeting and went through the plan and empowered the principals to meet with their staff. One of the things that I met with both Eric and Lisa in the last day, just to talk about some intricacies of it for the K2, that they're going to use one of their staff meetings to talk about how we're going to plan this. So there is consistency, because I think the difficulty in that is, you have 2 kids in different grades, and
Sure.
it looks different. And then the discussion isn't maximizing the learning time. We had 10 minutes of work, and it's a full day of work in school. So really going to be working, once it's approved, if it's approved, to work with the principals to craft the message, work with Dr. McIntyre, Mr. Consigli, to say what is the message you want to get out to the community, as well as the principals, and then they're the building leaders, and they're going to lead their staff forward.
this is the first time that we're trying it, and so I think
Yes.
the more effort we can put into setting it up for success, I think it'll be better received, and then potential to use it going forward, versus we try to rush it out and potentially it's not fully baked. I'm just wondering, is 1/1 the right date, or is 2/1 a better date? And
I think early January would work, because
Okay.
we have meetings coming up. The principals were aware of it yesterday. They actually were aware of it over a month ago, because this was a meeting that was going to happen a few weeks ago. As far as the specific language, that would be something that I would work with them next week early on to get that moving forward. And I know with working with the CTLs, some of them have already started to plan. Some of the early grades have already started to plan and have the work ready. Because originally when we came here, it was going to be the first day. So we had already started the works of let's start planning some of this.
thanks.
Any feedback from the special education department? So any kids that are on IEPs, 504s, that have any type of, accommodations for learning?
The feedback was just around time, to
Okay.
ensure that it wasn't the next day, to ensure that if the students needed extra time, even if it's due 2 days later, and some of the students who had additional accommodation had more time, it was more around time, and that they had contact hours to work with students after the snow day.
Okay.
But the special education team was represented in the meetings that we had.
Excellent. Next, my next question is, obviously there's a host of other districts.
Mm-hmm.
From those districts, were you able to obtain, what they're using for blizzard bags? So do we have models of what they're sending out or sending home?
I definitely do, and just it's quite a range of what's there. And before, I really wanted to hand out specifics of this is some of the lessons. I wanted to meet with the principals, say, here are some ideas that we can do. Because the biggest piece that I saw through this was it's a lot of online learning, it's a lot of discovery, and it's a lot of reading and responding to different things. We saw some YouTube videos that teachers, students would respond to, as well as some of the tools like Flipgrid or Edpuzzle, where students can create certain things and hand them into teachers for Google Classroom. My worry is saying, here's what X district did. Some people may just say, oh, that's what we're doing then because I said this is the example. I really want to take more time to Milfordize it and say, here's what we do well, and let's maximize that in our time here. Because I have seen some different things. I saw a video and I shared from Chicago school districts that was doing something like this, and it was really, really inspiring to see what the students came up with that I wouldn't have thought of.
I guess I'm sorry, I have one more
okay.
question. You talked about soliciting feedback afterwards. Have you thought yet about what form that might take? Will that be a Google survey to families or teachers or students, or what vehicle might you use?
I have a few different ideas, but when I meet with the principals, I'm going to I want to be consistent with how they're gathering feedback. Right now, Google Forms is a lot of how we're gathering feedback,
Yeah.
but at the same point, I don't want to continually send out surveys to families. So if it happens in 2 months and they've had 4 surveys between now and then, I don't want to tack on a 5th survey. It could be a community meeting, it could be I'll sit in the high school library and email me personally. I'm not trying to skirt around the question. I just want to make sure when we gather feedback, the time that it happens, we maximize the feedback that we get. And if it's the 5th survey they got in January for whatever reason, it's going to be the first one they delete. Except for the 7 of you.
One more question. And obviously this is a pilot. Do we still have to petition the state to get credit for this day, or are we still in the such early phases that the state may not recognize this yet? I'm just trying to tease this out.
Yeah, so what we do is you take a vote tonight either positively or negatively. If it was a positive vote, then we'd share our plan with the state. One of the things, last year, how many districts, Matt, do you know off the top of your head in Massachusetts were doing it?
6.
6. I think that number is expanding dramatically this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sense of that?
Well, the meeting that I sat in, there was 16 from Massachusetts, and there was about 40 in the room from New England. And as recent as last week, I met with a district, and we had a district meeting, and there were over 30 districts looking to pilot and sharing plans and different things. So at least, in the Commonwealth, there's going to be over 16 that I knew of a month and a half ago that are putting into the state on top of the 6 that were here last year.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, MJ. I'd like to throw a motion out there that we run the pilot of the alternative learning, structured alternative learning Blizzard bags for no more than 2 days. Can I get a motion? Motion by Joe, seconded by Chris.
Sorry, is it 1 or 2 days?
Yes, 1.
When-
Okay.
Well, I was just reading off of the.
I think we're going to shoot for
The
one.
side
I
letter.
think we're going to shoot for 1 day.
Did you say 2?
I said no more
It's
than two.
no more than 2.
No more than 2, because
Okay.
on the side letter with the teachers, we only had 2. We're only doing 1 just in case it goes well.
So it's a
we
1
do-
day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
1 day.
This year, 1 day.
Thanks.
All
And
good?
as of now, we're only including the current year, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
All in favor? All right. Thank you, MJ.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
I like to keep everyone on their toes, Megan.
I
Stop
just-
throwing numbers out.
I just know if I missed
What
it.
Joe's saying is he passed.
What did he say?
Like,
What was he saying? 2? I heard him say 2.
a week, we're taking a week.
Next on the agenda, Milford Public Schools policy readings. Megan, do you want to go ahead and touch on these?
Certainly. So the concussion one we discussed before, it was just some updates. It's been reviewed both by the Director of Nursing as well as the Athletic Department. So there's just some updates in here to make it more consistent with what we're doing in terms of assessments and whatnot following a head injury. So I think some important updates, certainly for all of our student athletes. And the main change really is to incorporate middle school sports, which weren't factored into when we first adopted the policy.
Okay, so with that being a second reading, can I get a motion to accept this policy? Motion by Jim, seconded by Jen. All in favor? Next one, Megan?
Certainly. So then we actually have a policy around the organization of instruction for our schools, and just in reviewing that one, it wasn't consistently aligned now that we've moved 5th grade back to the elementary level, so we just wanted to make the update so it actually is aligned with the current configuration. So that's pretty straightforward. Just elementaries K through 5, middle 6 through 8, and high schools 9 through 12. Obviously something that will potentially be contemplated, you know, as we look through our long-range ed plan, but today's current organization of instruction.
And that's a first reading.
That is a
and
first reading.
There is no vote required. Does anyone have any questions or anything? All right. Thank you, Megan.
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna switch this up real quick. Got some guests over here too. We're gonna have reported assistant superintendent. We got Tim and some other teachers.
I guess as an introduction, Tim and company, I'll let him introduce everybody. They're here to talk about a diagnostic program and progress monitoring tools that they're piloting this year. If you recall, we kind of had this discussion when we were talking about MCAS, is what are the kinds of tools that we're using to monitor students' progress throughout the year. Woodland started using this program, and I think that they've only been using it for a little while, and I think they found some initial success with it. So I wanted them to come in and kind of talk about what they're finding.
Thanks for having us. Introduce my my panel here. Over to my left, Adam Manning, a 3rd grade teacher. Dr. Patty Kelly, our reading specialist, and as well as our curriculum coordinator, 3 through 5. And to my right is Julie Fitzgerald, a grade 4 teacher at Woodland School. So we're really excited about what we've seen so far from iReady, which is published by Curriculum Associates, which is a Massachusetts-based company. And just to give you a little background on how we came to this point with iReady. My colleagues here know that for the last 2+ years, or since I joined the district, I've been looking for ways to look at some assessment data that we could find that was going to be really powerful and useful in the classroom. Previously, we were using GMAID and GRADE, which are 2 assessments that are a little bit outdated and don't reflect our current standards in Massachusetts, as well as current curriculum or instructional models that we're using. And the data that was generated from those reports, I don't think anyone really had a full understanding of what it meant and how to use it. So we've been looking at some different things in the last 2 years. And so Dr. Kelly and I and another teacher were looking at this last spring, looking at what are some options that we have that are out there that will give us some actionable data that we can use with students in our classroom. We came across iReady, again, it being a Massachusetts company, so that was something that we had quick access to. They sent out a sales rep that did a demo for us. We talked to some other districts in the area that were using iReady, and we were really impressed with some of the data that was being generated through this assessment, the reports that we could get, and the things that we could do in the classroom. So we gave it a shot this year to see how it was going to work in our classrooms, and we've been really, really impressed and pleased with the information that we've gotten, and talking with our teachers, and I'll have them talk a little bit more about what they're doing and seeing. They've been really pleased. It's been information that we can put in their hands immediately, and they can act on it immediately. So what we've done so far is we've done done it with reading, and we've only done reading assessments. Our plan, once we were really excited about that, I talked to Dr. McIntyre about it. He found us a way to get this for math, and we're going to roll out math next month as well. So in the fall, we did a day of PD with the teachers, so they got a sense of how this assessment works, what it's going to be gauging with our students, what kinds of reports and information that they could get, and then we used it with our students. And it was about a couple of 45-minute sessions with students where they took an online assessment. Teachers were able to monitor it as the students were taking it, which is fantastic. So you can see if kids are clicking away instead of actually doing the thinking and the reading that comes with it. What's great about this assessment versus, say, MCAS, because we can do the same thing in MCAS, we can watch their progress as they're going through it. We can intervene when we see that the kids are speeding through it. Versus MCAS, we can't say a thing. So we were able to make sure that the kids were doing what they needed to be doing during that assessment. One of the things that is also a fantastic aspect of the iReady assessment is that it adjusts for each student. So as students are doing well with certain types of questions, the complexity of those questions increases. So you can really see where the student is going to top out. But if a student is struggling with certain skills or concepts, the types of questions that they're seeing moves down a little bit so that it adjusts to the student, so we can find out where the students are really, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and every kid is getting an individualized assessment really, which is really a powerful tool for our teachers. So what I shared with you is a couple of examples of some of the reports that are generated that our teachers are using. I didn't give you everything because could be reams of paper and data. Obviously, there's no student names attached to this. But I gave you an example of a class report, where you can see where, as a teacher, you can see where as a class, where my class's strengths are, where their weaknesses are. If there's certain aspects of reading where we need to target some instruction, you can see as a class what that looks like. It also breaks that out by student and kind of groups them. What you're looking at is a grade 3 class report, so you can see where in certain standards and skills students are falling. A couple pages in, you can see what a grouping page, a class grouping page looks like. In those instructional groupings, what iReady does is looks at a class composition and says these students have similar needs and similar profiles based on their assessment results. And it groups the kids for you, and then it provides for you, these kids should be working on these skills and these standards. Here's the sequence of instructional goals that you should put in place with the kids, different types of lessons that they should have. Because they have similar profiles. And then I gave you another example of a individual student report. And with those student reports, it gives that similar types of information. It tells you where their strengths are. This is what the student can do. These are next steps to take with that student. And not only does it give you those standards and where students did well or didn't do well, but it also gives you, in some cases, lesson plans. So, a teacher can take it or leave it, but it gives you a great place to start for kids. So that's been really, really powerful as well. We're just really scratching the surface with iReady, but with the diagnostic, but we're loving it so much that for the first time I think I've ever heard this, teachers were asking, can we give more assessments? Because the information has been so great. So we're rolling out an intermediate assessment actually in the next 2 weeks for students to take and teachers so that they can see, okay, the last 8 weeks we've been providing instruction based on the results of this diagnostic test. Let's see where the kids are now. So about every 8 to 10 weeks we can assess the kids, check their progress, monitor their progress, and then start all over again. So that way we're not waiting until the end of the year to course correct. We can course correct every 8 to 10 weeks, like, okay, this is working, this isn't working, let's go in a different direction, let's keep doing what we're doing. So it's been really, really powerful. So we're really excited by this. So I'll get off my soapbox here and I'll turn it over to my colleagues here, and I'll start with Julie. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing and doing with iReady?
The information that we got from this initial diagnostic was the best information that I've ever had for reading. What I did with the information personally, I sat down, went through each student. The assessment groups them. I took that, I actually broke it down a little farther, and I have formed all of my intervention groups off of this information this year and used the lesson plans that they have provided for the intervention block. And so I've got centers, so I've got one group with me, a couple of kids, or one group is playing games, another group is on the computer, another group is with my special education teacher, and we're just moving kids through. So they're literally getting exactly what they're missing on intervention and our intervention block every day. It's been, I'm anxious for this second diagnostic. The window opens tomorrow. I tried to do it today, because I thought, well, I could bring some information tonight. So I'm really anxious to see how this targeted, because I've never had an opportunity to teach this specifically to these specific needs.
So, we just don't hear teachers saying, give me more data, give me more assessment, and that's what we're hearing, so. Dr. Kelly?
My viewpoint, or my lens is as a reading specialist. So what this enabled the reading specialist to do, because we got the results and we were able to look at the students and look at, not only the students that have done very well, but look at the students that appear to be struggling or appear to be having some, difficulties in some of these components. So it was an opportunity for us to have great discussions with classroom teachers, because we were able to look at the results. We were able to, one, see if we already had them in reading intervention or if there was another type of intervention that was being provided for the students. And two, we were able to talk to the teachers and say, what are you seeing in the classroom? Because, this is one test. We want to make sure that, there's all types of assessments going on every single day in the classroom. There's all kinds of formative assessments and, pre, post tests and just, everything, just the classwork, the assignments that happen in the classroom daily. So we wanted to take, a really good look at everything that was going on and asking teachers, is this what you're seeing in the classroom? Like if your student didn't do as well as you thought, maybe on a phonics component or a comprehension component, is that what you're seeing in the classroom? And the teachers were great because they were very, it wasn't just about, oh, yes, take a look at them and, tell us. They had the information and they were using this and saying, again, Tim uses the word triangulation because we were able to look at a lot of different assessments that they have. So we were able to have the conversation and say, is this what you're seeing in the classroom? And some would say, yes, we would appreciate you taking another look at this student. So that way we were able to take them, we were able to assess them where we're actually sitting with the student. It's a lot different when you're sitting with a student versus being, at a computer with them. But this also enabled us to make sure we don't have children falling through the cracks, that we are making sure that we have our eyes on the students. And in some cases, after we assess the student, we said, we feel they're on grade level. We can give you the data that shows they've done very well with their accuracy. We're not concerned about that. With their comprehension, maybe they're lacking in some of those inferential types of reasoning and questions that you're being asked. But what it really did for us, it was great conversations we were able to have. And we did end up picking up some more students, which is great. That's what we want to do. And there were some students that, after the conversation, we were able to say, the teachers were like, that's good, because I'm not seeing, I'm seeing good things happening in the classroom, so I feel comfortable with where they are, and let's just see what happens. So it really did, with the grade, we weren't able to have conversations. What we had were stay nines. So you're just going by a stay nine, and you're, 4, 5, 6, they're average. But this gave you so much more information. And, I remember, Julie, you stopped me in the hall one day and you were saying, we were just talking about open and closed syllables, like you had done a lesson from this, because that's where the students were falling down.
That's where my kids
that
needed
group
it.
were
Yeah.
falling down. And, it was, so there's great conversations coming from this assessment, and I think that's really important.
I'm glad you mentioned that triangulation, Patty, is because we don't want to, with any assessment, we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. Whether it's MCAS or iReady, any assessment, we don't want to say one assessment is going to totally define one of our kids. So we want to have multiple measures, and we want to look at things from different perspectives. When we rolled this out to staff, I wanted to be very clear, and I made this statement to our teachers. Nothing is ever going to replace a teacher sitting down with a student and reading with them as the most authentic and valuable assessment we can do with their reading. No online test is ever going to replace that. However, there's a place for both of these. And if we do both of those and we do some other assessments in class, we can get a more full and clear picture of where a student is instructionally. So this is a one. I don't want it to be the only measure of how our kids are doing. Adam, how are you using it?
So off that point, it isn't the only measure, but it does provide you with a wealth of information. At the beginning of the year, I had already read with students, given them, DRAs or a Rigby, and then we gave this iReady, and I found that the information it gave back to me seemed very accurate based off what I already knew about the students. It kind of reinforced what I thought. Maybe I had to tweak a couple reading groups based on the information, because it did give you a wealth of information, very specific, and kind of like Julie, between the intervention block and centers, I'm kind of using it the same way, because it does target a group of students and the instruction where their need is, and it allows you to differentiate and have centers and have those students coming in and out, and you're able to really dig in on what their needs are. And I can understand why teachers are going to Mr. Kernan and saying why, more assessment, because it was quick, it was easy, it was kid friendly. It starts with this little video that they like, and then it does adjust based on how they're answering, so it kind of avoids them being frustrated while they're taking it as well. So seems great so far.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's
Open up to any questions if anybody has any.
I think it's great. And I actually had a conversation, like you said, so I had a student who came late this year. He came from a different town, came in my classroom late, and one of the first things he did was take the iReady. And when I saw the results, I happened to be passing a reading teacher in the hall, and said, this student missed the first round of reading intervention, but I really think based on the iReady and reading with him that he's going to need it. And the reading teacher already had his name. She had never even met the student before, but she knew everything about him, about how he is reading, what his needs were, and she already had him on the list for the next round. She already knew the group that he possibly belonged to, where he could get the target instruction from reading intervention. So it does keep everybody on the same page. Like, it was pretty cool for that to happen.
Yeah.
So how does the classroom path tie in with iReady, since obviously they're two separate entities? And do you have to tell iReady where you are in the curriculum process?
No, one of the selling points for me was that the iReady assessment is based on the Massachusetts frameworks. So versus a Common Core or just some kind of national generic, this is based, like, the standards that they're assessing are the Massachusetts standards, which is what we are and should be teaching. So it's directly tied into what we're doing in the classroom. And it's one of the things that you can, one of the links that you can click on a student report is you can look at exactly which of the Massachusetts standards they're doing well in and which ones that they need work on. So it's very specific to what we're doing, which has been great.
Yeah, certainly we never use the phrase, or never want to use the phrase teach to the test, but in this case, we kind of want to teach this test because it kind of gives feedback to where the student is in the curriculum process, correct?
It addresses what our our state says our students need to be learning at each grade level. So yeah, in that sense, not necessarily teach to the test, but teach to the standards.
Teach to the standards.
Yeah.
Yes. What subjects does iReady assess? So you mentioned math.
Well, they have the math assessment, and they
Yep.
have the reading, as far as I know. Then there's different components in each of these, in each of the tests. Like, you could see the phonemic awareness is in the reading piece of it, phonics, high
Vocabulary.
frequency words, the vocabulary, comprehension for both fiction and nonfiction. So that's tested in the reading piece of it. I'm not sure of all the components actually in the math yet.
No, we haven't. We're just rolling out the math next, but we're really focused on the reading and math. And as far as I know, they have iReady assessments K through 8, and they also the Curriculum Associates also publishes like a set curriculum that goes with it. We did not purchase that. We just really focused in on the assessment piece.
And if we find that we're having a lot of success at Woodland with iReady, is the plan to roll it out to the other schools as well, so there's consistency, or?
Yeah, so actually next, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
19th.
19th, we're bringing iReady in to meet with all K to 8, but we're also bringing in 2 other companies just to compare what's going to work best. I think right now iReady's got the edge. So unfortunately the other 2 companies have a long hill to go up, but But I think the other grade levels are hearing about what's happening at Woodland, and are anxious for it too. And I think Brookside and Memorial are piloting, definitely math, I think, and I'm not sure about the reading.
Eric came.
the reading,
Yeah,
too.
Eric came and joined our PD day for iReady. I think that was one of the first days that he was working. He came in and sat in on our PD for that. So he's got a taste of that, and he's anxious to roll that out at Brookside too and see what it looked like. Yeah.
And it's right around the same cost as what it's costing us for GMAT and grade. So, and like I think Adam mentioned, it's immediate. When we were doing grade and GMAT, people filling out bubble sheets, and then you had to wait in line and
feed them through the
it was
Scantron.
you probably weren't getting the results for at least 3 weeks, I would say. So,
yeah.
GMAT and grade didn't group the students like
No.
you've seen here with iReady.
It gave you a lot of general information, nothing specific. Like Patty said, you'd have a stay 9. You'd get it back, and a student would be a 6 out of 1 through 9, and that was that.
Even as parents, we kind of looked
No,
at
this is- I
it
mean-
from, like, where is it?
Yeah.
this is doing, like everybody here said, exactly what you want out of an assessment. It's informing their instruction. It's exactly what we want.
And you asked like what were the components of it, and Patty said, well, it talks about comprehension and phonics, and it can group students based on if they need a lesson in phonics, and the website provides the teacher with a link to a phonics lesson that you can print out. And I brought a couple here that I've used in intervention, and I mean, they're great, and it's just quick and easy, and it's targeted specifically to the results.
I would just like to second that. These intervention lessons are short and sweet. They're to the point. They get right to the meat of it. I can make flashcards, and then I can go through my ELA games and pull a similar game, so they get the one-on-one instruction or small group instruction with me. Then they're going to play that game at another center that's already custom made for that particular idea and practice it. And then we're going to take it right to writing.
It's a great addition to the things that you already have in place for those skills. They provide you with graphic organizers, all sorts of things.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. This sounds like a tremendous tool, so thank you for sharing. I'm just curious about the math component. Will they have to do another PD day for teachers for that, or is it going to be very easy now that we all know about iReady?
So great question. So so for our 3rd grade teachers, they teach ELA and math, so we're not going to have to do another one.
Okay.
For our 4th grade teachers, some of them teach ELA and math. They won't have to do another one. But for our 4th grade teachers that are split into ELA or math, the math teachers will.
Okay.
In 5th grade, because they're departmentalized, our 5th grade math teachers will need to do that.
Okay.
So, so there's some teachers we're not going to have to do it all over again because it's the same thing.
Yep. Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Do you mind just clarifying, so are the kids using iReady just as an assessment, or are they also using the online component for some of their intervention work?
No, they're just doing it for the assessment. So
Okay.
there is an online component to this,
Okay.
which is much more
That's where you
expensive,
rather
where they take the test and then they can like plug into like an online kind of online lesson track, but was way beyond our means.
So is the expectation that these students will still continue using ST Math
Yes,
as kind of their online math support in addition to the curriculum that you're?
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So, one, I just wanted to say thank you. I think it's really easy to look at our current assessments and just say, yeah, this is what we've always done. And I don't think we really have the time or ability to, you can't waste time with assessments that are no longer useful. And I did want just to let you know that I'm not familiar with the ELA component of this, but we have used in another district where I've worked the math, and it's been very successful.
Oh, great.
And it's the things that you're talking about are exactly what we found. We found the groupings to be very on par with the rest of our data, and the lessons, to your point, were very, very effective and well received by our teachers and our students. So
That's great.
it seems like a great product, so thank you very much.
It seems incredibly powerful, and I love hearing kind of the firsthand feedback in terms of how it's being used in the field, so thank you all for coming tonight. It's obvious question probably, it's all multiple choice, 100%. Yes?
Well-
Let's see. No, I don't believe it is. Some of it is short answer, but it's not. It's mostly. It is mostly multiple
And the
choice.
tool grades it?
Yes.
So even in those cases,
Yeah.
so they're providing,
Yep.
okay, got it.
Yep.
It's independent of students' individual grade, though. It's a tool that we're using to figure out where they are, but it would be completely independent of a test
yes,
example,
yes,
right?
yes.
Completely.
Yes.
How about in terms of feedback to parents and families? I know it's still new, but at some point, like if my child was really struggling in phonics, that would be really helpful to know as an area that I could work on.
Yeah.
Just down the road, I guess, is there visibility that would be,
So we had that discussion early on.
I know it's very new, so
yeah,
I don't
and that's why, and that's part of the reason
Okay.
we didn't like just print out the reports and send them home.
Sure.
Is because this was still new to us, and we wanted to make sure that it was valid and supported what what we talked about. It matches what we're seeing in the classroom. We wanted to kind of wrap our heads around what kind of information that we have here. Is it good information? We think it is, but we wanted to kind of get our hands on it before we push it out. So what we've done is there's some of our teachers are feeling comfortable during parent conference season, sitting down and talking about it and sharing pieces of this to go along with the stuff that they're doing in the classroom.
Great.
Not just printing out the report and handing it to the parents, but as they're talking about this is how your child is doing, and here's some evidence to support that claim.
Okay.
Excellent. So we're starting to dabble in that.
Okay. How about broader curriculum implications? Certainly, Dr. Kelly, as you think about as the curriculum lead, as you think about overall the curriculum, how do you take the information and start to think about how you can use that?
Right. Well, like I said, these discussions that we're having with teachers. So, in some cases, some of those comprehension, especially nonfiction, when you think about even fifth grade, how it is departmentalized, if a child is having difficulty or maybe didn't score as well on the iReady, that makes us think about content area. That child might be having more of a difficult time in content area. So again, you're thinking in the content area. So you're thinking about what can we put in place to help this student. It just makes you realize it. So it's not, even though this is a reading test, it's not just the reading test for the reading teachers. They certainly have to share it with all, the whole team, especially in the 4th and 5th grade. So, I can see us looking at this test to talk about, what we might need for comprehension, in especially what I'm thinking about informational text. That's where it really strikes me. With some of our students, I would say that phonics piece of it too was a little alarming for some teachers, just because they thought it was a little bit lower than they would have expected. But again, I did have the advantage of sitting with a student that was taking a test, so I saw exactly how that was rolled out, what it looked like. And I thought it was great, but I also thought maybe the children didn't have enough experience with how they were asking the questions having to do with phonics. Like syllables and asking about sounds, and they had PH and they had F, and it was like, well, that child might not really know, that difference when you're just hearing a sound. So something like that, it was great because we were able to have a conversation. And that's where all of these other assessments that they do with their students, when they're sitting with them doing a Rigby, which is, the running record piece of it. So, and again, like Julie said, she jumped on, she saw that some of her students had difficulty with the phonics, and she jumped on the whole open and closed syllable piece of that. So, because I already gave them the lessons to do that. So I can just see having these types of conversations, and down the road, if there's PD that needs to happen, to address some of the if the in the content areas, if some of the teachers are seeing that, wow, this is why Susie's struggling, in science, or Bobby's struggling, in social studies. They, could be the reading piece of it.
Absolutely. Especially as a teacher at the beginning of the year, to know kind of where is everyone and what do I want to work on before I move on. It seems really powerful.
I think the phonics and the vocabulary were the two areas that I think as a staff we were most we didn't expect that. Because I think especially with phonics, we're thinking that's more of a K-2 type of thing, and for our teachers at 3 to 5 to see that there's some weaknesses in phonics, that was something that, okay, what do we need to do here to change our instruction to fill this hole? Vocabulary was another one.
And is that happening, Tim, across the grade level in terms of the conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it not only across the grade, as a staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then how about incorporating the instructional coaches? Is that relevant, or is that something that would?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The instructional coach that's working at Woodland, Kim Schmidt, she's got her hands on this data just like, the rest of us, and she's also looking at some of the whole school data that I have, that Patty has, and looking at, okay, what can we do when she's going into classrooms to support teachers to, like I mentioned, vocabulary. How can we incorporate that vocabulary instruction into our ELA lessons? So she's got that in mind as
Great.
she's working with teachers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So do the GMATs go away with this tool?
Yes.
Is the cost relatively similar?
It's
same.
exactly the
Yeah.
same.
Okay.
Yeah, it was exactly the same.
Right. That was really exciting. Thank
Yeah.
you guys.
And guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the other benefit of just going with iReady K-8, the information stays with the kid.
Yes.
So if they're going from school to school, other schools can see how
Yeah,
Joey's
we
doing.
can
right?
track that student over time.
Right.
Different classes, different teachers. Yeah.
Good.
Did you say, Craig, did you say it was a subscription-based service?
Yeah, yearly.
Yearly?
Is that what you mean?
Does
Yeah.
that give you so many seats, or?
You have to
It's
buy them by the
By student.
Yeah, like
student.
$6.
By the student?
$6, yeah.
Oh, per student?
Yeah, $6 a student, and we
Yeah.
get the 3 diagnostic assessments and the 2 intermediate progress monitoring. So
Are there floors associated with that as you open it up to the whole district? Do you know?
I'm not sure yet. We haven't got that far.
All right, so we're at the beginning of that. Okay.
I guess, like they were talking about before, there's that whole other curriculum piece that you could ratchet it up to over $20 a student. So,
Yeah.
So it's gonna be based on need.
yeah.
It's on their website too, Jim, the
If
pricing
you
and
wanna
stuff.
look
I
at
was
price
just
breaks.
checking it out, because that was gonna be my question as well, but it's dirt
I was
cheap.
just curious about deployment, like, how we're gonna, if it's successful, how we're gonna roll it out district-wide, and what's the launch logistic associated with it, and we're using the Chromebook as the medium.
Mhm.
Do they also offer ancillary modes of entry, like mobile devices and a mobile app, or-
we did see stuff with kids using a tablet, like an iPad,
Okay.
but
I didn't know if it was cross-platform or not, or,
I don't know.
so I was just curious on
Mm.
on how it would scale, that's all.
And the other, in the I guess just the initial conversations I've had with the other companies, they're all basically the same,
They're all the same.
maybe within 50 cents plus or minus, so.
That's great, thank you.
So, and right now, we're only third and fourth grade, currently the only 2 grades using it?
No, 3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5.
Yep.
Excellent, all right.
Yep.
And then the plan, we have iReady coming in for a presentation for district-wide.
Yeah,
K
iReady.
through 8.
And we have the high school ELA and
Yeah.
high school math coming too,
And when's this happening?
the 19th.
19. So the plan, would that be to roll out probably for next school year?
Yeah, right, so coinciding with budget cycle,
correct,
what,
yeah.
which
But-
way we're gonna go.
But the platform we have in 3, 4, 5 can be utilized throughout this entire
Right.
School year.
But, like we said before, I think Brookside and Memorial are gonna pilot math or English or both, this year,
Okay.
okay?
And
Just
if all goes well, in
Yep.
a sense, in the big picture, K through 8 would have both ELA and math.
Mm-hmm. Because all our schools right now, K to 8, budgeted money for GMAT and grade.
Right.
So we're just hoping it's
1-to-1.
kind of a wash
Yep.
and we get more out of the tool than we've been getting.
Good.
Well, thank you guys. This
Thank
is
you.
much
Thank you.
needed
Thank
information.
you.
Thank you.
I should close this.
All right, next on the agenda, we have report of superintendent schools, school choice update and discussion.
So, as Craig is kind of getting the projector back on and kind of functioning so that the public will be able to see some of these slides, couple of things that just I want to throw out there. One is from a trend perspective with school choice, we're seeing significantly more students wanting the school choice into Milford, and we've actually had to close school choice out because just because of class size. Like we set kind of parameters around class size, K through 12, and grade 7 and 8 we have very large classes right now, so they were closed even before we started, and there were some spots in different grade levels. So we've seen an uptick from like kind of low 80s, high 70s a few years ago, and I think this year we're somewhere in the high, like somewhere between 118 and 120. And those numbers can change on a daily basis as students move in and out, either from a choice in or choice out perspective. So those numbers are fluctuating all the time. But the general trend is that the choice out numbers are going down, the choice in numbers are rising. The choice in numbers are rising more significantly than the choice out numbers are going down, just because generally if a student choices out of a district, this is just as true in Milford as it is in any district, we tend not to see that student come back. And so if they choice out in second grade, they're going to be a choice out number for like 9 or 10 years. And that's just the reality of it. School budgets are very complex, as I think the school committee is painfully aware of. And there's a lot of like complex formulas and factors. And I want to share kind of a school choice fiscal analysis tonight, because I think there's a fair amount of misunderstandings, misperceptions, and misconceptions out there. And I really want to talk about kind of a few different ways to look at the impact of school choice on the Milford Public Schools and the Milford community, and kind of how that looks from like a true budget perspective and impact. So if you go to the first slide, Craig. I'll do that next time. These are projected numbers for 18 and 19, and this is really these are kind of actual numbers as we know them today for the out for 18 and 19. But this is more of an academic exercise, so I don't want you to focus on the actual numbers. I want you to focus on the impact. So every student that choices out of any district in Massachusetts, there's a $5,000 cost. That $5,000 cost is paid from the sending community to the receiving community. So if a student from Milford choices to Hopedale, we send $5,000 to Hopedale to help cover the cost of the education of that student. So in 2018, the net loss to Milford is about $935,000. 2019 right now, it's about $880,000. Again, 19 is a total projection, 18 is relatively close. This data the actual data seems to trail about a year or so from a state perspective. Beep. How's that? Is that good?
That was awesome.
All right. You're on the wrong slide now.
Too many beeps.
All right. So the other way we've looked at school choice, the fiscal impact of school choice, is to compare the difference between the choice in and the choice out revenue. And the choice in revenue works exactly the opposite as the choice out revenue. Sending districts, like let's say a Hopedale student chooses to come to Milford, the Hopedale Public Schools or the Hopedale community would send Milford $5,000. So in 2018, we had approximately 187 students choice out for a total expense of $935,000. We had 113 students choice in for a total revenue of $565,000 for a net differential of $370,000. Again, 2019, these are projected numbers. These are going to fluctuate throughout the year. It's about 176 that are choiced out at $5,880,000 total expense, 119 choiced in for a $595,000 total revenue for a net of $285,000. Now, I kept this very simple. You're jumping ahead of me. You didn't hear the beep. There's differentials for students who have students with disabilities, English learners, and economically disadvantaged. Again, I just want to keep it simple for the purposes of our conversation. Beep. All right. Then this chart is, I think, the most telling chart, and it does a couple things. I'm going to share the formulas with how we got there, but basically, what happens in Massachusetts is every district receives, for every student that attends public school, Chapter 70 revenue. And if we look at, and that revenue stays with the community. So if you look at like 2019, our Chapter 70 revenue for this year is $11,500 per student. So what's actually happening is we're keeping that $11,500 here in Milford. And you get, and I'm going to walk across, let's go to the bottom row of the chart. So it's a cost of $5,000 per student to choice out. 176 students are choiced out for 2019. That's a total expense of $880,000. Choice in has been 119 students for a total revenue of $595,000. That gave us that number of a net deficit of $285,000. But what's actually happening is we're also keeping the difference per student of the Chapter 70 money. So what happens is for those 176 students that choiced out, we're getting $6,500 per student. We're keeping that $6,500 per student. So the Chapter 70 differential for the students who choiced out is for, and again, this is projected for 2019, but is approximately $1,144,000, which actually gives the town of Milford a net of $859,000. Now, Craig, if you go to the next slide, and then we're going to go back to this one. This kind of breaks down the formula for each of the last 5 years, and you could go back 10 or 15 years if you wanted to. Two things are driving, I think, increased revenue from the choice, the total net choice. One is if you look at our Chapter 70 number for 2015, it was $10,308 per student. If you look at it for 2019, it's $11,500. So our Chapter 70 money, which is coming closer to being fully funded, based on the Chapter 70 formula, we've increased about $1,200 per student across the board in Milford. So if you look at, the formula is basically, let's look at 2019 because we use that as an example, which is the bottom line in the formula page. It's $11,500 minus $5,000, which is $6,500. That's what we're keeping as a community for students we're not even educating. And that's true of every district in Massachusetts. It's not unique to Milford. You multiply that number by the 176 students that choice out, and Craig, if you go back to the slide before, that comes out to $1,144,000. So there's a perception that that we've lost money historically from the school choice process, when that is not truly the case, because we're receiving that differential. Now, the reason the revenue is increasing from the school choice process is two things. One is the gap is we've had more choice in students, so that's bringing in revenue. Our choice out is decreasing. But more importantly, our Chapter 70 money is increasing pretty dramatically. It's jumped over 10% in the last 5 years per student. And that's really driving the kind of the total increased revenue we actually receive from school choice. If you go to the next slide, the slide after the what is the formula? So although the net impact of the last 5 years of school choice appears on first glance to be negative, the true impact to the Milford taxpayer and the Milford community is approximately a net gain of more than $2.5 million. And again, this includes revenue from state Chapter 70 funding and choice in revenue from sending districts. You would subtract the choice out differential. Just to give a little kind of quick history lesson in terms of like what's happening in Milford overall. The net dollar change in the Chapter 70 allocation to the schools over the past 10 years has increased $10,824,417. The net percentage increase in the Chapter 70 allocation to the schools over the last 10 years is 43.7%. Now, the net dollar change in local contribution over the last 10 years is $1,218,821, which is a net percentage increase in the local contribution in the past 10 years, which is 5.3%. If you annualize those two, it ends up being about 4.37% per year as a state increase and a 0.53% increase at the local level. So if you go to the next slide, Craig. So if you were to add the Chapter 70 revenue from the state to Milford over the last 10 years, it's over $190 million. Again, the average increase was 4.37% from the state from Chapter 70. Average local contribution increase was 0.53%. Now, it's important to note that the Chapter 70 formula, even though it was not fully funded for 2019, our local increase was 7.7%, which was significant. A fully funded Chapter 70 would, again, significantly positively impact, obviously the Milford community and the Milford Public Schools. And we're working, with our state associations and school committees across the district to kind of push that. And we're making progress. So I'd open it up to questions that you might have.
When we say that the Chapter 70 formula was not fully funded, can you clarify that for me, fully understand that?
Yeah, so, unfortunately, I don't have the actual formula kind of laid out, but for districts that have basically high-need populations, the state is not kind of fully covering those gaps. So we're not fully receiving the funds, I think initially promised. Joe, do you remember the date that the Chapter 70 kind of rolled out? Maybe Kathy does. When?
Well, the entire foundation budget committee, they've made recommendations in terms of how underfunded communities have been funded. So based on that criteria, Milford should be, because of our demographics, our Chapter 70 should be increasing based on that. And they've started the process in the state's budget in FY19, which will greatly impact our Chapter 70 over the next 4 years. But there is a point of time that we have to wait to get there.
So I can give you some of that, and I think you've shared some of that information in the past too, Joe.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to share anything about it.
It's kind of the foundation budget review that's been under scrutiny now for a couple of years, but they did make some progress this year. So the underfunding is primarily around special ed, ELL, and then the health insurance reimbursement as well. They increased the reimbursement this year for, I believe, special education, but some of the other areas they didn't approve. So it looks like we're still a couple years away from being fully funded if they hopefully eventually approve and adopt the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. But I did have a couple of questions on this, because I think this is really powerful data, and it clearly shows that even though the state isn't fully funding the Chapter 70, Milford's been benefiting immensely from the Chapter 70 formula over the past few years, and you can see that in the information that Kevin laid out here. So it's been, as expenses have gone up, they've primarily been covered by the state aid, not necessarily by the local contribution, and there's certainly room for improvement there, and I think we need to continue to have conversations around that. But as part of those conversations, we need to make sure that we're being completely transparent with the data, and so just have a couple of questions. When we talk about the local contribution, are those numbers only reflecting the operating budget?
This is based on the operating budget. I think it's called the cherry sheet, Kathy?
Correct.
Yeah, so this is the operating budget based on the state cherry sheet.
Okay.
Which is state aid from Chapter 70.
So when you say that the local contribution over the past 10 years increased by 1.2 million.
That's to the operating budget.
That's to the operating budget.
Correct.
So that's not factoring in the indirect costs of things like insurance, for example.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And it wouldn't factor in like the Woodland Building project.
Right.
For example.
Right.
As well.
But from a per pupil spending perspective, that calculation also doesn't factor in the Woodland Building project, but it does factor in those other indirect town costs, like the insurance.
I believe so, but I don't want to say for 100% certainty. I'm 90% certain that's accurate.
So what I'd like to see, if possible, is not just the increase to the operating budget, but the increase of the total local contribution, which is obviously going to be higher, but I think it's still going to tell the same story, but it's going to be much more transparent and won't look like we're playing with some of the numbers.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I have a question. So you said
You've got one job.
It's burning question. So you said that we get 11,500 for every student. So would a wealthier community get less?
Typically, yes. And again, it's a pretty complex formula. I don't know if Kathy, you want to speak to that? You may know that a little. It's a con-
So
I mean,
well, that's the.
I guess why I say that is it
I don't mean to throw Kathy under the bus, but.
It has to do with the minimum contribution that each community in that formula is the ability to pay formula that's been under review.
So-
Because it shouldn't be all the
So,
same.
so the review committee, or the benefit for fully funded foundation budget or Chapter 70 money is really gonna benefit about 40% of the districts across the state of Massachusetts. 60% will see no additional revenue.
Right, so it's more costly for somebody to come from a wealthier community school choice out, it's more costly for that district.
Correct.
Than it would be for us.
Correct,
Yeah.
because they're not getting that same differential.
Right.
So what's that based on?
Property tax values
Oh, okay, so.
as a percent of the overall town growth.
Okay, thank you.
But it's a
And-
pretty complex
It
formula.
is.
It's long.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of commas in it. So it's not based on, it's just based on property tax value, that's it, it's not based on industrial, commercial revenue or anything like that?
I'm sure that has to be a part of it, Jim, because it's based on the town's overall
Overall
tax
financial?
revenue.
Okay.
So that's a portion of their tax revenue.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Kevin, it looks like the cost to school choice, that 5,000, has been unchanged for a number of years. Do you think that that's at risk? Because if that goes to 8 or 10,000, it looks very different.
I haven't really heard a lot of,
They have not adjusted that for,
Okay.
I'm gonna say at least 8 years. And I have not heard of any talks of that number increasing.
yeah, I honestly haven't either. If anything, there's been a little talk about maybe an incremental, like a 2% or 3%, but I don't think it's gained any kind of momentum to my knowledge.
So if we want to just think about what the message is to the community from this presentation, the way I'm interpreting it is that for every child who leaves through school choice, which we understand we don't want our students leaving, we want them
Correct.
staying, and
Correct.
that's probably the biggest message.
Yep.
And we're working towards improving that ratio. But the biggest message I'm hearing is that if a student leaves, the district is still retaining somewhere between $5,000 and $6,500.
So yeah, so right
per
now it's
student.
6,500 for this year.
6,500.
Based on percentages we've seen, it looks like that number's going up.
Okay.
So that differential is actually increasing.
Okay, so if I'm understanding that correctly,
Yep.
then I think that's a really important message for the community to hear, because I think we've heard a lot of also maybe erroneous messages or messages that weren't based on full information. And I'll admit that maybe I didn't fully understand it.
And to be fair,
but
it's very, very complicated.
It is, I agree with that, but I think it's really important. No, we don't want to see $5,000 walk out the door, but number one, a student walks out with that money, so it is one less student in our classrooms. But number two, we're still retaining a lot of money per student who stays in the
Correct.
Milford
So for the
Public Schools.
176 students this year who are choiced out of
Yeah.
Milford Public Schools, we're keeping $6,500
Per student.
for each student that we're
Okay.
not actually educating.
Yeah, okay, thank you
Which,
for
which comes out to,
going through that
the
and explaining
$1.1
it.
million
Yeah,
of revenue of students we're not actually funding.
right, okay, thank you.
So this is definitely a much different perspective on school choice than what we've had in the past. And it does raise a question about choicing in,
Mhm.
right? Because, so we're retaining money on the choicing out, but if the kid's choicing in, if we're only getting an allocation of $5,000, but it's costing us $14,000 to educate that child, then it may influence our decision as to whether or not to allow choice in.
So one of the things we're running right now, Joe, is we're running kind of an analysis of what's the data on the choice in population, and what has it been for the past several years. I'd asked Lisa Byer, our data specialist, to also see if she could pull the data, because we didn't have that readily available for the students who choiced out to other districts, because the district that's educating the student controls that student's data and information. So I don't think we can get that data to do even a comparison of, what's the profile of the students choicing out versus choicing in. We do have the information on the choicing in, and probably, and I want to make sure we get this right in terms of the impact, because we will be having those conversations as well. So I don't want to say second meeting in December, the first in January, because I don't want to come to a quick conclusion and have a eureka moment and realize that it's not, the impact is inaccurate. So it's probably going to be a few months before we really have a firm understanding. We've been when Kathy and I did this analysis, we were in conversation with folks at the state level to make sure that our understanding was accurate to what was the reality in terms of the budget process from the state's perspective. So this is a true indication of the actual impact.
I was just wondering if we get that data, can we also get some information about when the students are coming in? I know we have the number of students by grade level that are
Yeah.
choicing in, but
Yeah.
can we also get the data like when they come in?
Like when you say when, do you mean what grade
Like,
level?
yeah, like,
Yeah.
you know, like kindergarten, or is it
Yeah.
middle school, like grade 6, or is
Yeah.
it 9th grade? Like, I anticipate that it would be at transition years, but I don't know, so I would like to
Yeah,
I'd be
we
curious.
can definitely get it. I know we want to answer it because I think
Yeah.
it's kind of
No,
like
when you-
it's
yeah.
a weird scatter plot, so I don't want to say
Okay.
anything.
But when you bring us the other data, maybe you
Yeah,
could also have
yeah,
that as
we
well?
can definitely
Okay.
do that.
I'm sorry, when you kicked off the discussion, you said we're currently closed for
We're not closed across the board. We're
Yeah.
closed in, I know for
certain
sure,
grades.
yeah, I know
I'm
for sure
sorry,
it's like
okay.
11, 12, and 7, 8. There's also other grades that are closed, but off the top of my head.
And
I
that's
couldn't
the
tell you which
remainder
one.
of the year?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And basically, we don't want to, and this is kind of to Joe's question too, is we don't want to kind of overcrowd our classes for the Milford students
Absolutely.
to pull in, like a $5,000 kind of, price tag. And so we're very careful. We also know that there's certain times a year where we see an influx of students. So we're also, like, we close some grade levels or some classrooms off earlier because we know we're going to see an influx of a certain number of students a couple times during the year.
Okay, thanks.
So Chapter 70 money, it's based off of what our student population would be if those students didn't
So every
choice
every
out
student who would be attending public school.
within our
Within the Milford
community. So
community.
it takes that into consideration. Okay, so it doesn't, if that number was to increase or decrease, that Chapter 70 money still is based off of the students that technically should be within the Milford Public.
That are so it's not
that
even.
could attend the Milford Public School
Correct.
systems.
But
yes.
it doesn't include, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Kathy, it doesn't include kids who attend private school. Because I don't think we get any funding for those students, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I know it definitely includes.
Charter school.
Charter and vocational.
Yep, but
But
I
that
don't,
would
but
not
I,
be classified as private.
but I don't think private school, but I can check
Right.
on that.
Okay.
Which is a small number of kids.
Kind of like kind of a ground floor. Are all districts within Massachusetts a school choice district?
So that's a great question. There's a lot of districts that close the doors to school choice for a lot of different reasons. One is that they have their population is such that, or their school building size is such, or the number of classrooms, they just can't bring in students. Some districts have kind of followed the analysis that Joe alluded to and said, are we really winning this? Is this a winning proposition for our district? You can't not allow students to choice out, though. So you can say we're closing choice in, but you can't say to a kid or a family you can't go,
Right.
because the way Massachusetts law is written is any student can choice into any district as long as that district participates in the school choice program, as long as they're accepting students.
As long as they're accepting, right? So all districts have to be, in a sense, part of the school choice program.
You can
It's
be
just whether or not
you can be
want
sellers,
to
you don't have to be a
accept
buyer necessarily.
yes. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much for that accurate and not misleading information. I appreciate it. Next on the agenda is report of Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Cafferty.
For the committee's approval, we have a new format.
You guys are
Just-
gonna love this.
We have
More expeditious
13
than the
warrants
last one.
in the amount of $1,430,351.60.
So what I did, I talked to town council, and is instead of approving every one of those things, which usually is 20 sometimes, I'm
Could be.
exaggerating.
Not here.
As long as we give the total amount of all the warrants, we can approve them all at once.
Great.
Yeah, see?
And then if a member has a question, anything specific, you can pull
Yes.
that out.
We can pull it out and we can review it. everything like that. So can I get a motion to accept the warrants for this tonight? Motion by Jim, seconded by Jen. All in favor? Nice. That worked out great.
And again, that was
The committee
town-
also has for
town
their
council
approval
approved of that.
Yes, yes.
a course reimbursement request in the amount of $2,221.16.
Get a motion to approve that. Motion by Laura, seconded by Chris.
The committee also has a personnel update. No vote is required from our previous meeting. And we do have a new out-of-state travel request for the kids in the hotel and hospitality group. They are looking for making a change in their capstone project for the seniors. They are looking to travel to a event hosted by All Travel Industry, and by attending that, they're looking to do attend the capstone project in March 30th through April 2nd of 2019. And we have the seniors that would be represented in the field trip with 18 students, 2 chaperones. And Judy has reviewed the out-of-state travel, and she has approved the travel for the students with no nurse for the trip. And they will be doing some fundraising to reduce the cost to each student, which currently would be $800, but they're looking to reach out to their partnership businesses and reduce the cost for the students. But prior to them doing that, they do need the approval to travel.
Sounds like a great idea. Joe,
Just
question?
a quick question. So it sounded like they're going to learn how to organize a trip essentially to DC in this case. So is the goal that this group would eventually oversee our DC trip, or is it just a coincidence that they're doing?
I think it's coincidence they're doing DC, just because I think that's where the thing is located. It's an interesting proposition. I could see them potentially helping out with some smaller trips initially, like some of our foreign exchange programs, and kind of working with those groups. That's an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some aspects I think they could manage, and there's others that we'd have to leave to our school administration. But I think there's probably some stuff they could do. It's not a bad idea.
Can I get a motion to accept the out-of-state travel for these kids? Motion by Jim, seconded by Megan. All in favor?
And there are gifts, Mr. Chair.
Yes. I have a total of 3 gifts. I will read through them and we can vote on them all together at once. I have one gift here from the Hockomack YMCA, the Daily Bread Food Pantry, Katie Levine and Eric Elmore. Brookside's partnership with the food pantry for a total of $1,850. Thank you. I also have another gift here from a local business, Gift in Kind for binders. Total value of $450. And the last one I have here is from Lacey and Malcolm Beaton, a check for $100 to the Family Network for contracted services and supplies. I get a motion to accept these 3 gifts for us. Motion by Laura, seconded by Megan. All in favor? Very generous, thank you. That's that. Next on the agenda is future agenda items. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up at the next meeting? Or in the future?
I
Megan?
just wanted to make sure that we were going to cover the strategic plan before we hold the forum.
We are, yeah. You know
Okay,
what? Because we lost it, we were initially going to do it this meeting.
Yeah.
We lost the last meeting, so
Sure.
everything got pushed back.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but the plan is it's on the next agenda
Great.
already.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Next on the agenda is old business. Anybody have any old business they want to bring up? All right, no one there. And we do have executive session tonight?
Correct.
Is that correct? So, with the executive session, we will not be returning to this meeting, so can I get a roll call for executive session?
Yes.
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 All right, and with that, thank you very much.
Mhm.